Greetings and welcome to Social Work 662 Online. My name is Michael Quant and I'm going to be the instructor for this section. I've been teaching this course for a number of years, both in person and online, but I really enjoyed this online format because I think it helps me to convey messages in a way that students can easily access whenever is best for them. It obviously offers a lot of flexibility, and I think that these video recordings help with gaining some context about the material. Other online courses that I've personally taken in the past just to have the instructor uploading some PowerPoints, and whereas this course, I think that some of the feedback I've gotten from students that there's a little bit more of a personal feel to it, so I'm hoping to keep it that way. And again, I really appreciate you signing up for the course, and I'm hoping that it's a great learning experience for you. And if it isn't, feel free to email me and I'll try to help tailor the course to your learning needs as much as possible. Also, feel free to call me at 312-610-0085. That's my personal phone, and I'm probably most responsive to email. So my preferred mode of contact is email, but feel free to call me if something does come up. Regarding the course prerequisites, I would talk with your academic advisor about this because some of the stuff may relate to you, and there are certain situations where people transfer or there might be other situations going on, but prior to enrolling in the course, undergraduate students are expected to be at least at a junior standing and declared social work as a major, and be concurrently enrolled in 410 and 421, whereas my understanding is that graduate students just must be at a graduate standing. So disregarding the online learning environment, being that this course is entirely online, an intermediate knowledge of D2L is required to be successful in this. If you're not familiar with D2L, or uncomfortable with the learning being entirely online, such as assignments, quizzes, papers, I would recommend that you transfer to one of the traditional classroom settings where you can meet personally face-to-face with one of the instructors, because most students do pretty well with this course, but there's a few people who prefer the face-to-face traditional classroom setting. And if you're one of those people, I would recommend trying to get into one of the in-person courses. But if you have done traditionally well with keeping on top of tasks and assignments and deadlines, then I would say that this course is probably a good fit for you. So again, this course is an undergraduate social work course, and it's intended to inform students about research methods used in social work. Students are introduced to a beginning level of research skills. It's going to be a broad overview of a lot of terms, and there's a lot of definitions, but hang in there because I think by the end of the semester, I'm hoping that you'll be able to review the research that's out there and be able to analyze it critically and also incorporate it into your practice as a social worker. Or hopefully, maybe there's a few of you who might feel inspired to go into social work research, the practice of it. So I keep that in mind as well. So some of the topics are the relationship between research and practice, and I talk about evidence-based practice every module within the entire semester. So I realize that there's a lot of people who are planning on going into clinical practice. So I really like to draw that relationship between research and practice and how they relate to one another, and how the research can inform your practice. Also talking about some of the underlying assumptions of empirical methods, the assumptions of our research, and talking about generalizability and working with diverse populations and what that really means for the research and our interpretation of it. Also the rationale for using different research methods and their application in idiographic and non-methodic studies, being quantitative and qualitative study, inductive and deductive reasoning, which we'll talk about as the semester progresses, and approaches to analyzing information gained used from each of these methods. And I wrap up each module with a discussion of values, assumptions, and ethics, and how they can inform research decision-making, both in the process of conducting the research, putting together proposals, and analyzing data, as well as writing it up. So some of the course learning outcomes, I'm hoping by the end of the semester, you'll be able to understand the uses and applications of various research designs, including basic science, quantitative methods, including some of the basics of social science, including putting together proposals, sampling, putting together research designs, writing up your analysis, also program evaluation and single subject designs. I've been teaching the single subject design course 793 at UWM for quite some time too, so it's another topic that I'm pretty passionate about and something that I do on a daily basis at my job as a psychologist. As we move throughout the semester, some other topics here are sampling issues and methods. Certainly I'll ask you to critique a research article, and certainly one of the biggest things that comes up is sample size and sampling issues. What are the methods to be more inclusive of diverse societies, and how are we addressing multicultural issues? Describing approaches to and procedures for data collection, recognizing and constructing quantitative hypotheses, how we would put together a research proposal, how we would create hypotheses, and how we would go about testing them. Also demonstrating the ability to evaluate these hypotheses using inferential statistic techniques applied to quantitative data. And I'll also be talking about analyzing results of qualitative data and mixed methods. So number 6, also identifying logical conclusions, predictions, and inferences from statistical results and demonstrate ability to assess the reasonableness of these conclusions. So I'd like for you to be able to look at research articles and see, are the conclusions sound, or is there potentially a different explanation for what's going on? Is there any biases in these conclusions? Also understanding limitations of research designs and conclusions, because all studies are going to have some limitations and the authors will list some of these for you, but there might be some other limitations that maybe the authors haven't addressed and maybe you would be able to pick up by utilizing the information from this course. Also number 8, I'd like for you to be able to recognize ethical issues in research and understand principles for ethical inquiry. So I'm going to be posting some videos and some articles and some issues related to ethics, and I would like for you to discuss these in the discussion forum. Also producing a critical analysis of research report using APA formatting, and understanding measurement theory and application. And for the final paper for the course, for undergraduate students, you're going to be critiquing an individual research article, and graduate students are going to be critiquing or putting together a literature review and discussing the pros and cons, strengths and limitations of a body of research based on a specific research question. And I'm going to be discussing that in depth later as we go on. All right, so some basic expectations is that I expect you to finish assignments during the week of the module, discuss concepts, ask questions in the discussion forum. If you're having any kind of problems understanding the course materials, and seek me out with any questions or concerns. Submit assignments on time, and if there's a reason why you might not be able to submit an assignment on time, tell me beforehand, because if you wait till after the due date, then there's not as much that I can do with you. So please tell me in advance, even if it's the day of, if something comes up. It only takes a minute, maybe not even, to send me an email just to let me know that you need an extension, and then I'll try to work with you. But if there's anything foreseeable, or if you have any kind of like a special accommodation such as a student visa, also give that to me in advance. And also try to give me feedback. If there's ways that I could improve the course, I'd love to hear that. And if things aren't working out the way that you thought they would, again, please shoot me an email and I'll try to work with you as best as I can to improve your learning experience. All right, regarding academic misconduct, you would think that this wouldn't be a big issue, but there are a number of issues with the final paper where people have either knowingly or unknowingly used other people's language. The use of anybody else's language without proper citation constitutes plagiarism and is grounds for failing the course. So there's more information at the following link about academic misconduct. And if you have any questions, feel free to email me as well. And hopefully I can help you to understand what's meant by academic misconduct, what's meant by plagiarism. I spent some more time talking about that at the end of the semester. Also worth noting that this is a 3-credit course, so students will need to plan to commit 6 hours per week to course-related work to complete the assignments, readings, and quizzes. As you can imagine, it's not a course where you can just hop in the final weeks and make up everything. There's quizzes and assignments along the way. So please be on top of things and hold yourself accountable to checking in regularly. Also, I'm not going to read all these university policies, but there's a link to a PDF that has all university policies about student expectations, academic conduct, etc. But I do think it's worth bringing up. If you are a student with a disability and you have a student visa, please let me know. Here's a link for reasonable accommodations made for students with disabilities. If it's something that I can accommodate, please let me know as soon as possible, and I'll work with you to make sure that I can still meet your learning needs. The required textbook is Engel and Schutt 2016, The Practice of Research in Social Welfare. This is the most current edition, and I think it's an excellent textbook to kind of give a broad overview of a lot of information, but covered concisely at the same time. There's also online resources for students who do have more questions or have more specific questions regarding the text and the course materials. So regarding the course schedule, obviously when you see the syllabus online, there'll be the dates in here. Right now I'm just going to break it down by module. So I try to develop the course in a way that mirrors the research process itself. So earlier on, we introduced the steps into research process, generate research questions, and be ethical about your research. In module 3, I'll post quiz number 1, and I'll also post a video that's got a review of the first 3 modules and what to expect for the quiz. Most students, if they put in an adequate amount of time to do the studying and watching the review session, do really, really well. You've got an hour and a half, 90 minutes to take the quiz, which most students have no problem finishing it within that time frame. In module 4, I post SPSS homework number 1, which is the only SPSS homework for the semester, which would require you to either have SPSS access on your personal computer or to come to UWM and use one of our computers on campus. If there is some reason where you're studying abroad and don't have access to SPSS or whatever it may be, please just shoot me an email and I'll come up with a workaround for you. But almost all students figure out a way to do it. Also worth pointing out in Module 5, for graduate students, I'm expecting you to give me just 1 to 2 paragraph description of what you're planning to do for your literature review. So by the 5th module, I want you to give me just a little bit of an introduction to where you're going with your final paper. This helps students to stay on track. And the feedback that I've got is that students generally like having those check-ins throughout the semester because it kind of keeps them on track and gets them thinking. And then they can kind of break up their paper in segments throughout the semester. And I've noticed that students have higher quality papers when I do it this way. All right, so by Module 6, you'll have had 2 weeks to complete the SPSS homework. So that's going to be due. And then we're going to kind of go into tools that you can use to answer the research questions. So I'll be discussing group experiments, single system design, and survey design, as long as qualitative designs and evaluation design. And so again, just be mindful of the dates for completing the quizzes. So in Module 8 is when Quiz 2 is going to be available. And you'll have until the beginning of Module 9 to complete the quiz. So to summarize the last few modules here is ensuring that you have an argument in your research, interpreting qualitative and quantitative data. And in Module 13, Quiz 3 will become available and graduate students will have another draft of the paper due. And then Module 14 is essentially just discussions, conclusions, and I'll have the due date posted for your final papers. So now that I've given an overview of the course, I'd just like to give some expectations that I have for students. Students are expected to submit all their assignments in Word documents to the appropriate Dropbox on D2L. Again, students must work in their own words. If you're going to be using a direct quote, only 1 per page. Using direct quotes following APA format, using source, date, page number, etc. Failure to comply by these can be grounds for failing. And I do run papers through similarities, plagiarism checkers. This isn't meant to scare you or torment you or to cause you any kind of anxiety. All papers are going to have some similarities, but I've had examples in the past where most of the paper has been kind of copied and pasted. All right, so another expectation is that I would hope that you would contact me if you're having any questions about the course or the quizzes. And if you're having difficulty, again, please feel free to email me or give me a call. But I do not offer extra credit, so if you're struggling with the course, it's not one where you can kind of just catch up at the end or get some extra credit to get a passing grade. Please let me know before we get to that point. Also, students are expected to complete all assignments by the end of the semester. There are some very, very rare cases where somebody might get an incomplete on an assignment. In case of serious illness, unusual, rare circumstances, rarely really ever happens. Actually, I can only think about one example in the many years and multiple courses that I've taught. It's very rare. So for information, you can revert to the university policies. But again, it would be something where you'd have to talk to me in advance. Students are also expected to contact the instructor within 2 weeks of receiving a grade on an assignment that they felt had been graded unfairly. And for more information, again, I'm going to defer to the student university policies. All right, regarding the course policies, online participation, students are expected to review all the course materials and expected to complete quizzes on time and at least 8 posts in the discussion forum. And that doesn't mean any kind of post counts, not like a yes, I agree, but like 8 thoughtful posts minimum. If you do have illness or emergency, you're expected to let me know as soon as possible, and I'll try to work with you again. Regarding late assignments, students are to submit assignments before the due date unless they talk to me in advance. And if I do give you an extension, I will grade late assignments, but 1 letter grade deducted per each day past the due date. So I'll give you up to 5 days past the due date. Otherwise, it's going to be given a 0. And that's for assignments only, not the quizzes. Again, if you have any kind of religious observations or if you have any kind of student disabilities, again, please let me know. If you have a student visa, please let me get that as soon as possible, but at least within the first 3 weeks of the class, because if you tell me about it after the quiz, then it's too late. Again, just to reiterate, incompletes are kind of rare, and if you want to contest a grade, please contact me first. And cheating and plagiarism are not acceptable, and I'll be covering this in depth later in the semester. Regarding grades, you'll get up to 5 points for participation if you have 8 quality discussion posts. There's also 3 quizzes at 20 points each, 1 homework assignment, which is the SPSS assignment, and your final paper, which is worth 30 points. So again, just to emphasize, if you're a graduate student, you'll have 3 drafts that are due throughout the semester, one in Module 5, one in Module 9, and another in Module 13 prior to submitting your final paper. So to break it down even further, the 60 total points for the quizzes will be given at 20 points each. Quizzes will be given online through D2L and made available 1 week prior to the date which it's due. Students will be allowed to access the quiz only one time. Contents covered in the quiz include materials from both readings and lectures. And again, I give those review sections, so please watch those recordings. Each quiz will cover primary content presented, such as any information since the previous quiz, and may include materials covered earlier, but typically only really materials since the previous quiz. The format of the quizzes includes multiple choice, true, false, matching, fill in the blank, short answer questions. So you'll have a week to complete the quiz from the time I post it, but I'm not going to allow you to take it after that date. If it does alleviate any anxiety, I would say that most students do really well on the short answer questions, and I give a total of 21 possible points. So you can still get some items wrong and still possibly come up with a pretty good grade. So just keep that in mind. So again, the homework requires SPSS software. Some of you might have access to it at home. Some of you may be able to download it, but most people go to the Enderus lab or one of the other labs on campus that has SPSS. Participation, again, is with the 8 discussion posts, original or reply, but I'm not going to give a full credit to somebody who just says, yes, I agree with this person's post. Like, it needs to be a thoughtful post. And I have the grading breakdown for how I score on the following curves. So 93 to 100 is an A, 90 to 92 is an A minus, so on and so forth. But as some of your other instructors might feel about this, I personally feel that if you've been actively participating on the discussion forum and really adding a lot of insight and thought, and you're kind of on that cusp, I probably would consider that whether or not to increase you to the next level here. So even though the discussion forum is only really worth 5 points, sometimes it can be worth more than that if I see that you've added consistent content. And I might also just mention that I'm not necessarily going to respond to everybody's posts, but I do read everybody's posts. So for undergraduate students, your critique of a journal article is going to be worth 30 points. I'm going to be posting several articles up to D2L that I would like you to choose one of and read it carefully and apply the course content to briefly summarize and critically evaluate it. So I will post some examples up online, but I'd like for you to discuss the main research problem and questions addressed by the article. Is this clearly identified, and do the authors adhere to it throughout the paper? Is the background literature relevant, up to date? Are there any kind of gaps in the knowledge? Are the hypotheses and research questions clearly identified? Do they appear statable? Is the study's design appropriate for doing so? What is the methodology of the research? Is it clearly described? Who are the subjects? What's the study's design? What measures were used? How were the results analyzed? And do you believe these results are helpful to the field of social work, particularly related to diversity topics such as race, gender, ethnicity, socioeconomic status? So I'm going to warn you, please do not write this paper as a fill in the blank. Don't just answer all these questions. Use these questions to guide your paper, but don't just simply go through and answer each one of these questions, because your paper is going to read horribly and you're not going to like your final grade. So use some of the examples that are online to kind of guide how you would write up your research article critique. And also, I think it's important to note that there's a difference between critique and criticism. So I've had students in the past that have just criticized an article, which didn't really help me to get a good grasp of if they understood the strengths and the weaknesses of the research articles, because all research articles have strengths and weaknesses. A straight criticism is not a critique, especially not for the purposes of this course. I know what the limitations are, but I want to see if you know what the limitations and strengths are. So students' analysis must not exceed 5 pages double-spaced, no less than 12-point type, 1-inch margins, numbered pages, followed APA format. Again, spelling, grammar, punctuation, clarity, logical flow, adherence to APA style, writing quality makes up approximately half of your final paper. The other half is the application of course materials. Even if and based on what we've discussed in the course, I'm hoping that you can look beyond limitations of just small sample size, because every research article that's ever been done could have a bigger, more diverse sample size. But I'm hoping that you can look beyond that and discuss maybe limitations with the design or the study itself and what could be improved if you had unlimited resources, or what you would do differently if you were at the helm. All right, so for graduate students may work individually or in groups as they feel and so inclined, up to groups of 3. Just select a topic of interest and critically evaluate recent research in the area. By recent research, I mean probably within the past 10 years or so. And the goal is to inform the reader on the research that has or has not been done on the topic, assess the quality of this research in terms of issues of methodology, soundness, breadth, and representativeness of subjects, determine whether the research is sufficient to guide practice, and identify implications for practice suggested by the research. And the paper is a review of the literature, but written from a research perspective. What I mean by that is that you should be addressing the key issues regarding whether the research that's been done has been sufficient and rigorous to allow for a practitioner to apply the findings to their practice. Basically, whether or not there's enough sufficient recent research out there to really support evidence-based practice within the field. Some other guidelines is to be sure that your topic isn't too broad. So for example, rather than choosing to review research on addiction, you might want to narrow down your topic to treatment for gambling addiction, or effectiveness of psychosocial interventions for cocaine addicts, or relapse prevention, so on and so forth. And review empirical studies only, and limiting your analysis to studies in which someone has, in a systematic way, collected data on some type of research question and analyze these data in a similarly systematic way. And this description applies to both quantitative and qualitative research, and may apply to either poor quality or good quality studies, but does not apply to theoretical writings or essay type works in which somebody is just simply stating what they think on a topic. Again, you should focus on recent and relevant studies for your topic, so don't waste your time writing a review of something that's out of date or does not focus on recent issues, and focus on depth rather than breadth. So given our limited space and time, it's unlikely that you'd be doing a good job with more than 5 to 8 empirical works. So I would say it's probably best to stick to 5 to 8 rather than trying to do 20 to 30, because then you're probably not going to be doing as good of a job. So a good way to begin the paper is to read some of the example papers, and I'll post some of the example reviews online. So again, there's going to be some check-ins throughout the semester. The first being in Module 5, where I'd like to get some idea of where you're going to be going with your paper with just a few brief paragraphs of what general topic you're planning to study, and with a few citations. So each student or group's analysis must not exceed 12 pages, double-spaced, following APA format. And you can also use tables that won't count against your page maximum, and then submitting a paper within MS Word format. And again, keep in mind that spelling, grammar, punctuation, clarity, flow, adherence to APA format all account for approximately half of your paper grade.